Okay, so welcome. It's Damon Hart, Mr. Foxy, the Foxy Home Buyer, and I'm here with a special guest today, and we're going to talk about some stuff that you probably think you know a little bit about, but you don't. All right, and that's our special guest today. I'm not even gonna hold back on introducing him, Mr. Matt Porcaro, and I don't want to mess up. This is a beautiful Italian name. I know.
Yeah,
It's
no,
Porcaro, right?
dude, close enough. Yeah,
All
Porcaro,
right.
perfect.
As long as I don't call you late for dinner. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I could do that because I'm from Jersey. I could do that.
Good. Yeah,
Okay?
man. We're neighbors.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So Matt's here. For anyone that doesn't know, he's known as Matt's known as Mr. The 203k way. He's known as Mr. 203k, and I'm gonna have him tell you a little bit about him. But for people that don't know anything about you, you're from New York, yeah?
Yeah, New Yorker, man. Born and raised.
All life. He was telling me a funny story when we met up last time. Just funny New York stuff. You can't beat it. Only in New York things are gonna happen that you just hear funny stories.
Yeah, man. We live life on hard mode up here, I like to say.
That's why I moved to Florida eventually.
Yeah, dude.
I
right
retired.
behind you. Yep.
So Matt, tell for the people that are watching, tell the viewers, how did you? First of all, tell us a little bit about you. You grew up in New York. What's new? What's your story?
Yeah, man. So grew up in New York, working class family. Dad had his own business, and saw a lot of financial ups and downs through my life. Thank God we always had what we needed. But when your father had his own business actually in the construction space, he is a general contractor. Yeah. A lot of tough times, right? The economy was very pertinent on his business and the way things would happen month to month, week to week, year to year. So when the highs were high, you knew, and when the lows were low, you also knew, right? And being a young kid growing up in that environment, again, nothing against my parents, they did what they could, but you don't realize how much a kid really absorbs that stuff, really absorbs the stress that I would see on my dad when I knew he wasn't working for a while, right? Like didn't get a job for a while, and see the stress on my mom when she couldn't, afford certain bills and stuff. And, I played video games down in the basement, and their phone number that they would give to business, bill collectors and everything like that. That was their business line. The voice machine was right there. Right. And playing video games, and every 2 minutes, you please call Ford Credit, please call this mortgage, please call. And they, 5 times a day. And you're just like, man, you don't really think too much of it, but you're like, I guess they're not paying their bills or whatever. So growing up, man, I started to really at an early age understand the importance of money, but more importantly, I wanted to just know, as much as I knew my parents worked their butts off, I knew there was something's got to give, right? What's the missing link? How can I grow up? There's people out there that don't have this, right? That don't have these financial issues. How do those rich people do it? How does that all happen? So went down the rabbit hole, man. Just from day one, when I was young, even in college, just reading books about, finance and real estate and everything like that, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and really kind of opened my eyes, right? It's a classic. I tell people, it's like taking the red pill, right? Because it does open your eyes. Yeah, it does open your eyes to a whole nother world, especially being a kid like me growing up in a blue collar world that didn't really understand money. No concept of investing or assets or anything like that. My dad, Italian guy, right? So he got money. First thing you do is spend it on anything, vacation, cars, whatever. That's the Italian thing, right? Restaurants, the whole thing. Right. And that's what I grew up in. So very early age, knew money was important, but wanted to figure out how to make it work. And that's eventually what brought me to real estate.
So I get that, right? You have a beautiful story, because obviously it starts at you're getting going as a kid. You see that, okay, it's not like this for everybody. Yeah. You decide to do something about it. So fast forward to kind of how you found this whole 203k journey, and what even that was for you. Not everybody knows what 203k is. So why don't we start there, right? What does 203k even mean? How do you break that down to the average person?
Sure. So the 203k loan is an FHA loan, right? So if you're listening, you've probably heard of an FHA loan, but if you haven't, FHA loan is, HUD's loan program. They're actually guidelines. The government actually doesn't give the money, but ultimately what it is these are guidelines set to allow people to buy houses for only 3.5% down, very low, low credit, lower than normal credit scores. The reason for the program is to get more home buyers out there, make home buying more accessible to the average person, right? Which is great. It's a great program, right? 203K is another version of the FHA loan, same guidelines, but the benefit of it is it allows you to buy properties and fix them up with no money out of pocket. You're able to wrap the renovation cost into the mortgage. So it's the initial, reasoning for this was, they wanted to get people still into home buying, even if they were looking in areas where, they felt like they couldn't afford. They can go buy a property that's in bad shape and still have a way to get into some of these neighborhoods that they really desired to get into, right? It was a way, combat the whole zombie houses thing, that you've seen that was, popular for years, right? These houses that would just sit for years and years, right? So it was a way to it was a program that would help that. So like you said, I had no, a little more about me, right? When I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I really wanted to get into real estate investing, right? But I was like, there's no way, right? To me, like after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, he talks a lot about real estate investing. And I'm just like, yeah, man, especially being a kid in New York, like, I'm like, there's no way, like, how the heck am I even going to buy one house, right?
Yeah,
let alone like multiple houses. Yeah. Like Robert Kiyosaki's like, yeah, buy a bunch of houses. I'm like, that's rich old people buy houses, like multiple houses, right? Like how is a young kid like me or anybody in the working class going to be able to buy multiple houses? So
in New York at the time, yeah.
And in New York,
did your parents have a home at that time?
They did have a home. Yep.
Okay.
They had a home.
So you knew somebody that owned a home, right?
Yeah. So I knew it was in the cards, but like owning multiple just seemed like impossible. I'm like, well, how, if you could barely pay for one mortgage, how are you going to pay for another? Right. So
I get it. Yeah.
Lo and behold, was interested in it, was listening to a couple of different podcasts, and I was listening to one just kind of business podcast, and a guy came on there and started talking about, buying houses and flipping the contracts, this little thing called wholesaling. Never heard of it before, but it got me really interested, right? Yeah. Never heard of it, right? It got me interested. I'm like, okay, well, what's this? So went down that rabbit hole. And listen, as a young kid, it like seems great and it was awesome. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but for me, it didn't. I tried for years, honestly, at it, like just all different things. And, as a young kid, just following different strategies and like, this isn't working, not trying to figure out the way. And looking back, I know the mistakes I made and why I probably could have made it crack. If I knew what I knew now, I probably would have cracked it. But the idea was like, I was doing this here in New York. It was like, shark infested waters, right, man? Like I either had to have a lot of time or a lot of money. I didn't really have either. I was working a full-time job in the city for, as an electrical engineer and, trying like on the weekends, posting up bandit signs, having cops stop by and like yell at me and stuff in the middle, and like, but again, a bunch of leads and stuff, but nothing ever converted. Joined a bunch of different masterminds, different programs, tried to take courses, just tried to find like my way of what I could do, right? Flip houses with no money or like use other people's money. They're like, oh, we'll just go raise private capital. Suffice to say, it's hard to raise private capital and try to get people to give you their money when you say you've never done it before.
Done a deal. Right? Yeah, sure.
So, they say it's possible, but I'm sure it is for some people, but it is a hard sell. So again, long story short, man, it's just like nothing ever panned out. But we had a local real estate investment association. I tell this story all the time, but it just like solidifies the importance of like networking and just talking to the right people and how like the right person could really change your trajectory.
Okay.
There's a lady in the RIA. She ran the RIA. Super mom, has like 7 kids, 1,200 rentals, runs the RIA, captain of the swim team, like one of those people, just like has every accreditation.
You got everything figured out.
Yeah. And you just look at those people and you're like, man, how do they do it? So I took her to the side one day and I was like, listen, her name was Melissa. I was like, listen, Melissa, like I've been cracking. I really want to make this happen. Right. Like this is doable. I'm like 25 years old, 24 years old. Like I know I'm young, but like, if you could do this all over again, like what would you do? Right. Because like, the position I'm in, like there's got to be a way to get into this game. And she's like, listen, I've never done it before, but If I could go back in time, do it again, I would use something called a 203K loan. And I'm like, so she says that. I was like, okay, what's that? And it was funny because, again, years and years of reading, bigger pocket surfing, all this stuff, never once saw this thing.
Never wondered. Yeah.
And I'm like, what is it? And then she told me, she said, well, it's a loan that allows you to purchase a fixer upper property for only 3.5% down. You can buy foreclosures, you can buy as is properties. So basically here in Long Island, you know, basements are popular. So she was like, basically find a fixer upper, find a foreclosure, 3.5% down. You have that, right? And I did. I had about 10 grand in the bank at the time, which was enough. And, you know, as opposed to 20% in New York, which would have been 100 grand, right?
Yep.
3.5% was very attainable for me, right? So she said, find a fixer upper, buy a foreclosure, live in the basement, rent out the upstairs. She said the caveat is it's an owner occupant loan, but you're a young kid, you don't have a property yet. Why not take advantage of this loan? It's free money. So, you know, live in the basement, rent out the upstairs, do that, renovate it, build equity into the property, take out a home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, do a BRRRR strategy, and go and buy more. So I was like, holy crap, this just blew my mind because I had never heard of this before. I actually had the piece of paper somewhere. I just posted on my Instagram recently. Like, it was the original notes I took that day of like the pros and cons of the 203K. It's the first time I ever heard about it. It was actually like 8 years ago.
From what she said.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
That day I wrote it all down. And lo and behold, I went home and started Googling it and like trying to learn more. And like, suffice to say, there was no information on it, like, period. Like, you know, and I'm like, well, this sounds great.
There was no Mr. 203K.
There was no me back in the day. Yeah. And the reality was, I was like, well, this really sucks. But she really knows what she's talking about. And like, she's from New York and she like gets the market. And like, I just took it really to heart, man. So, you know, fast forward a little bit, I ended up calling one of the only mortgage people I knew who was a family friend. And in retrospect, that's probably a blessing in disguise. Although he'd never done a 203K loan before, which I found out the hard way. But he was probably, because I had somewhat trust in him because he was a family friend, he kind of pushed me over the edge to just kind of jump in head first with no swimmies on. And lo and behold, what ended up happening was I picked up a 2-family actually. So I learned by accident that FHA loans allow you to buy up to a 4-unit property. So for anybody interested in house hacking, right? If you're familiar with house hacking, very popular these days, right? You buy a 4-unit property with these low down payment loans, get in for very low down payment. You live in one unit, you rent out the others, you live for free, and you only put a couple $1,000s out of your pocket. So I learned about this 2-unit by accident because I was looking for properties that were really low. Because mind you, like, even, you know, back in 2016, like, it was impossible to find stuff in New York that I could afford as a single income guy. You know, I was making maybe $70,000 a year, which is pretty good at the time. But to buy a house in New York with the taxes and everything like that, it was still insane. Like my pre-approval was like $270,000 or something like that.
And what were the average houses going for over there at that time?
450, 500.
Okay, so you were out altogether.
Yeah, man. So like I was looking at the bottom of the barrel, like stuff that literally nobody would even flippers wouldn't even want to touch, right? So ended up finding this 2-family, and I said to my lender, I'm like, well, I can't afford this. It's 270,000 listed. It probably needs 80,000 worth of work. I have to be in for 350. He said, no, listen, on FHA properties, they'll let you forecast the future rental income of the other units to your debt to income ratio. What that means is you can get approved for a lot more, because you're going to be using that income to qualify.
The income here to qualify for the future income to qualify for what you got right now.
Bingo. Yeah. So what ended up happening was that extra was $2,000 a month or $1,700 a month added to my debt to income. So it's basically like getting like a $20,000 a year raise, right? Now, all of a sudden I'm effectively on paper making 90 grand a year. That pushed me over to get a loan for 350, which gave me just enough money to cover the rehab. So I scooted by the seat of my pants, but ended up purchasing the property for $270,000, put $80,000 into it. Now, only thing out of pocket for me was $9,500. That's all the money out of pocket that I spent on the property getting in. Yep, that was the down payment. 8 months later, we finished the renovation. It was a crazy process. Again, there's a lot of details we can get into more, but crazy process. But at the end of 8 months, I built 150,000 in equity off of that 9,500 bucks. To make things even sweeter, I lived in it briefly, rented out one unit, lived in the other, was living effectively for free. The tenant was covering most of my mortgage, if not, I was kicking in a couple $100. But the beauty was after a year, I moved out moved in with my now wife. We were not married at the time. We were getting married soon, and I cash flow that property for $2,000 a month. So, I made my money back on the rehab immediately. I 10x'd it, and then not to mention, I was making $2,000 a month net from this property within the first year. So that was the vehicle. I call my thing the 203K way, right? Because that was the way I got into real estate in a tough market, right? It allowed me to get into something for low down payment, but still take advantage of like a BRRRR strategy, still take advantage of building equity into a property for very low risk, very low out of pocket, and a huge return on the back end.
Okay. So look, man, you got a lot of stuff in your story. Fantastic. But I feel like there's so much to unpack in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because you did like 14 different things. I know you in person, right? You're just one of those guys that can just make really complicated things. Your mind moves so fast. You can just put it all together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Easily. But there's a lot of moving parts. And I think the one thing that stood out to me is that not only did you get your initial investment back, your 9,500 bucks in spades, like forever, then you also made your regular $80,000 investment, which the bank lent you. Like, the bank lent you that money to do that. And then once you got the project finished, what was your upside? You had like what, another
150,000 in equity. So I reappraised for 480, and I was all in for 350.
Bro.
And I mean, now it's appraised for like 700.
Do you still own it?
320. Oh yeah, man, that thing's a cash cow. I'll never let go of that thing, man.
Listen, no wonder you're a 203K away.
Yeah, it changed my life, man. And the problem was, like we said, like not enough people know about it. And from what they do know, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation on it. It's real estate's best kept secret. And the reason being is lenders and agents are really the ones that are supposed to be letting people know that this thing's out there, right? But the reality is lenders and agents don't want to do it because to them it's more paperwork, right? They're looking for the easy, low-hanging fruit, right? They want Harry and Sally homebuyer with the perfect credit and the 20% down. They want to go in and they want to offer full ask on the property, no contingencies, and get to the closing table, right? That's what we saw for the last couple of years, right? It became like completely transactional.
Sure.
Right?
Or if it's on the other side, cash, they just want cash right to the table, close in 15 days, 20 days, one inspection, and that's it, and we're done. Bingo. Right?
Yeah. So there's no middle ground, but the reality is that there's such a need for this, especially now, right? Very interesting stat that I found out pretty recently, and it's alarming, right? And we learned a lot about this. I know, obviously, we know each other outside of this, and at Boardroom they talked about this, but we're not building houses fast enough. Right? It's just not happening. And the reality is, of all of the residential inventory in the United States, 80% of it is over 30 years old, right? So over 30% of the United States inventory is already aging out. It already is, it's ready for, it's prime for renovation, right? Houses, they have a lifeline of like 30 something years in terms of like functional obsolescence, right? Like you want to make sure that your HVAC is up in order, and like all your MEPs and
windows,
stuff, right? Yeah. Now with like new regulations with states and stuff on what's required now, right? Like you need to be energy efficient and all these things to get these discounts. So renovating existing housing is so important right now. But the problem is a lot of people feel like we're talking about primary residences here, but still a lot of people think that they need to buy their house and then run up their credit cards at a 25% interest rate to try to finance the renovation, or save up and never get the renovations done that they want. Sure. Meanwhile, you can wrap the renovation costs into your mortgage at a 5% interest rate, 6% interest rate, 7% even, way better than 25% on a credit card, and be able to take advantage of the equity immediately, right?
Yeah, that's solid, man. Yeah. So look, this is beautiful. So take us through, right? Take us through. You already did all this. You got the property, but if I'm not mistaken, you didn't stop just there, right? With
No.
this one, 203K? All
Yeah.
right.
So one of the
Okay.
cool things,
Let's talk about
about,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead.
so here's something you could probably appreciate, but people just starting out, I don't think they realize how huge that first deal is. Like you and I know, right? The gap from 0 deals to one is massive, right?
Huge.
The
Yep.
amount you need to grind to get that number one, there's some lucky ducks out there, but nobody likes the lucky ducks, right? I always say, like, nobody likes the story where people just like hit it right from the get go, right?
Made my first offer and then they accepted it. I made 50,000. No,
Yeah, nobody
don't tell
likes
me that
that,
one.
right? There's a reason why movies, there's the hero struggle, right? Like the guy,
Right.
like, Rocky doesn't just knock out Apollo first punch, right? Like there's a whole thing, there's a whole storyline behind it. People like to see people work for what they want.
For sure.
So it's a hard grind, but people don't realize how important that grind is to get you to that first deal, because once that first deal happens, so many doors open, and it's hard to convey to someone that's just starting out what those doors even are, right? It's kind of like when it's kind of like, you're outside waiting in line in a club and you're like, it sounds really good and it sucks because I'm waiting and I don't know what I'm doing, but like your buddy's inside and he's like, it's awesome. And you're like, what's it like? You're like, I can't tell you, man. Like the vibe's just impeccable,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like, you can't explain the vibe. The vibe is just there, but you need to be in there to experience it. There's no other way to experience
Of
it, right? Like
course.
skydiving. You can't try to explain skydiving to someone.
You got to do
It's a
it.
feeling you'll never feel. With real estate, getting that first investment deal under your belt, there's so many doors that open for you. The confidence level expands. People start to take you seriously. You're not just a tire kicker anymore.
Sure.
And I think what happened to me was I realized how many people wanted to be my friend. Back then, like hard money lenders wouldn't even look at you unless you've done multiple deals. I did one and I presented it in a really proper deal sheet. Again, I've been studying real estate investing for a while, so I kind of like knew what to do, but like I didn't know how to execute on it. But like when I finished my deal, I basically just built like my own resume and like little deal sheet. I'm like, here's a deal I did, here's the returns, here's the numbers. You can see I did a great deal. I'm looking for more hard money. Like, please call me. Dude, all of a sudden out of the woodwork, I couldn't even get a hard money lender to call me back prior to this, right? Like I was telling you, nobody wanted to do private lending, anything like that. All of a sudden doors open like crazy. So I think for anyone listening, like that first deal is so important, or even just like those couple deals in the beginning, getting your framework and getting your like credibility. That's what the 203K way is. When I walk people through the process, I tell people like the 203K way is just the start. It's like the beginning, but what you're doing is you're putting a jetpack on your back and really launching yourself into orbit because you're getting so much equity and cash flow for a very low risk, right? But what that does is with that credibility now, I was able to go raise private capital and hard money to go buy, and then I use like the real estate agent relationship that I built to
Sure.
go farm more foreclosure properties and get into the flipping game. So I flipped pretty moderately.
Okay.
1 to
So
2
so
deals a
you
year.
okay, so let's not just sneak right through this, right?
Okay.
You went from you went from this hard money,
Yeah.
your first deal,
Yep.
then you finessed that into hard money. Hard money,
Yep.
for anyone that doesn't know, is you started using a private lender, that would
Yep.
charge you whatever points they did, but there's a private lender, not a bank, that's charging, giving you, money to go invest. So
Yep.
you turned that into building those relationships, and then you started getting into the flipping. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Exactly.
So what's going on with flipping now? Get into that story. What
Yeah.
happened
So I went right into flipping. Now back here in
there?
Long Island in New York back in 2016, foreclosures were prevalent or more prevalent than they are now.
Sure.
They've evaporated, and we'll get more into that in a second. But I got into the foreclosure game, right? I built the relationships. I kept calling real estate agents, and now I'm like, hey, listen, I did a deal now. Hey, I'm looking for more deals, right? Sending everyone my deal sheet. Like, here's the type of deals I like to do. Here's what I'm looking to do more of. So, got into the game. My background's in construction, so that was my kind of ace in the hole. But
Right.
I was horrible at everything else, right? Numbers, math, like finding deals, talking to real estate agents. Like I hated all that. I sucked at all that. But everyone's got their strengths, right? Some people are good at numbers. Some people are good at
Yep.
talking to people. Some people are like really detail oriented. Like all I had was the construction side. I just didn't have anything else. But what we did was, so that was where, going into flipping was kind of was what I wanted to focus on. So I immediately re-leveraged that into a flip. The equity that I used, actually what I didn't even have to pull out the equity. I worked out a deal with the hard money lender that they would take a position on the house and use that as my down payment and give me the rest of the financing. So I essentially got 100% financing on the next deal. I maybe had to kick in like a little bit of my own money, and was able to go do a flip on a foreclosure. Then I made 40 grand there, and then did another one for 30 grand. Right. And I was doing like basically about a flip or two a year. And I started really wanting to scale. And this is kind of where I wanted to leave off with and kind of a lesson here. So that was probably getting into 2019, end of 2019, start hitting stride, start raising more private capital, finished my last flip in 2019. And then 2020 came around, was hustling, kind of having a hard time. So one little thing is like, people like to say, oh, back in 2016, it was easy. It was never easy, man. It's not any harder now than it was 5-10 years ago. It's just different, right? Like back then, the difference was like, yeah, there was a lot of foreclosures, but dealing with banks was a nightmare. You don't want to deal with banks as a seller. Banks as a seller, they're the worst type of seller you could possibly have, right? They don't think they're everything's like operational on a computer. You're dealing with
they don't respond very timely. Yeah,
exactly. You're dealing with an underpaid law student who hates this job, but this is the only job they had, right? And it was like, you have like two sides to the story, but what ended up happening was I was building relationships, and I had 2 foreclosures in the pipeline. I just had gotten into contract with 2. I was like kind of in a dead zone, really farming, really trying to deal with these banks. They're becoming so much harder. By 2020, they were just becoming impossible to deal with. Finally locked 2 deals up. Had 2 deals under contract March 15th, 2020.
Oh, well,
Remember March 15th, 2020. Yeah, there was a little time when the health thing that we know that ended up hitting the world really hard was right at the time that I was trying to close on these 2 deals. And as luck would have it, even with my private money lenders, everything like that, there was no way that any of them were willing to lend on me during that time. So what ended up happening was I had to fall out of contract on both of those deals. Pandemic started, and I jumped out and tried to get back into the game, but then realized very quickly how exposed I was because there was no foreclosures anymore, right? World had stopped. There's no way to get deals anymore because foreclosures are completely done. Courts are not in action, right? And that happened for 2 years, right? Yeah. So I got exposed very quickly. And what ended up happening was I realized how important it was to not have just one deal source and not depend on one MLS deal source. So I went more into the off-market game, and that was my first foray back into it after doing it for years. And what ended up happening was I used off-market in training to learn the game to purchase my own home that I'm sitting in right now, which is my next renovation loan. I had done another one previous, partnered up with a cousin, but I wasn't fully on the loan. It was just kind of like partnered with him and helped him out on it. But the house I'm sitting in right now was my first off-market property, and I did the same thing with my renovation loan, right? I practice what I preach. Me and my wife were looking in a very specific part of New York, very highly competitive, during the pandemic and all like the craziness. So one of the great things about this loan product is that, again, you could purchase properties as is. Inspection doesn't matter. Appraisal doesn't matter. So we were able to farm the entire area of where we wanted to live. We did driving for dollars, and we sent direct mail, and we just said, hey, listen, we're looking to move into the area. Any interest in selling? We ended up finding an older lady that was literally just about to list. She was moving out into a retirement home. I was like, listen, we're really looking for a while. We're looking for something. She's like, yeah, but we have to fix some stuff up, and it's dirty. And I'm like, great, no problem. Here's the thing. You don't have to do any of this, right? I talked to the son, I talked to the daughter. They were worried. The real estate agent was telling them they had to stage the property, fix the stuff, pull out all the junk, clean it out. I came in, they were about to list it for $750. That's what he told me they were planning on listing, like $740. And I was like, listen, I'll take it off your hands. You don't have to repair it, stage it, clean it, anything. I'll close. You're not going to have to pay any realtor commissions. So all that money's gone, but I'll make it really easy for you. We'll close very quickly. But I need it for $615. And lo and behold, they took it. They just didn't want to deal with it. So off market was my first foray into it. But again, I practice what I preach. We're using the same same thing. We're using a renovation loan, purchasing the property, wrapping the renovation cost into the mortgage. And, we'll have probably 250,000 of equity on this property as well. So for your primary residence, it's just a no brainer. We only put 10% down on this. We didn't even put down, a full 20, but, I know
and it's 203K, same deal, same.
This is a home. So this is a Fannie Mae home style loan. It's Fannie Mae's version of the FHA 203K. The only thing, so basically, just quick for everybody listening, Fannie Mae home style, better for single family. The rate, like it's pretty much it is the exact same process of like getting the loan approvals and everything like that. It's just a little better on terms. Like you don't have to pay as much upfront mortgage insurance. There's a couple like little tweaks. You save a little money on it. The 203K is better for multifamily. You 2, 3, 4 unit properties, because across the board, the rates stay the same up to 4 units. With a home style, if you want to buy a 4 unit, even if you're living there, you still have to put down 25%.
Okay. So he just, ladies and gentlemen, he just hit you with a little plus there. So you got 2 different programs.
Yep.
That's a 203K right there, baby. He's hooking you up. So look, Matt, I would say, man, because, we try to do these things in and out in like 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I guess, what's the you're talking like that same conversation you had with the lady at the RIA. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that you would do again?
Yeah.
What's that one thing that you would do again? If you had to do it all over again, now knowing everything that you know, that could help somebody just jump right in and have, success pretty quickly, what would that be?
Absolutely. So, I would 100% do the 203K in the heartbeat. I would do it again, pretty much exactly the way I did it. I would do it better though. And here's how I would do it better. First thing I would do differently is I would work with a lender that was experienced with the 203K loan. The reality is not many 99% of lenders either don't know it or don't understand it. But there's a 1% out there that do. They actually specialize in renovation loans, and there's places to find them. If you're interested in it, I talk about it all the time on all my social media and stuff. But reality is you just got to find the right people. They understand the process, the right team. Okay. Got to get contractors that are, licensed, insured, and really have the whole thing, right? You got to create a clear scope of work, a very clear scope of work. The more clear scope of work, the less wrenches in the mix, right? The big area where people mess up on this loan is they get a contractor that gives them a very ambiguous bid, vague bid. And people wonder, that's how those whole arguments get into contractors hitting you up for money every 10 minutes because, hey, this wasn't on the bid. But when you said kitchen, I assumed you wanted a sink. It's like, no, sink's extra. You know what I mean? Though you have to be really specific with your scope of work, and a good 203K consultant. That's why, again, building that team is probably the most important thing. A good 203K consultant, good contractors are going to know how to write a good full scope of work, right? People's biggest complaint with the 203K loan is it's too much paperwork, it's too much of a headache.
Sure, I've heard that too. Yeah, for sure.
So you're a savvy investor, okay?
Yep.
Riddle me this: bank's giving you 203K loan will give you 110% of ARV. They will give you loan to value, so they'll give you 110% loan to value in exchange for 3.5% equity out of pocket, a 600 credit score, and 2 years of income. Think about how much leverage they are giving to someone who has no experience in real estate, no experience in construction. So does it make sense that, they want to make sure that there's a clear scope of work? Does it make sense that they want to make sure that the contractor, go figure, is licensed and insured? God forbid, right? They want you to do it right because they're giving you a lot of money. They're giving you a lot of leverage in exchange for very little, right? 3.5% is a sliver of what hard money is asking for 25%, 30% on their deals, right? So when you think about that, the paperwork, it's there to protect you, right? It's actually there. It's how you should be doing business. My background's in construction. Out of school, I worked in large construction in New York City. Every single large construction project is handled exactly the way a 203K project is handled. The paperwork, the scope of works, the bid sheets, the way they do the vetting process, like that's
Right.
all part, like this is how real construction is handled. The reason people have so many contract or horror stories is because they treat it as if it's just like a pipe, like it's just like a pipe dream and it's like an easy thing. Like you have to treat it like a business. It is a business. And if you're playing with big boy business money, you better be ready and have your ducks in a row. And that's the reality. If I would go back and do it again, I would make sure that all those things are ironed out.
Awesome. Awesome. So look, man, I get it. And one thing I appreciate about you more than anything is you kind of took, you're a really great story about faith more than anything, is because like a lot of people I think overlook how much guts it takes, but it also takes something up here to be like, you know what, I'm going to go for it and have belief in yourself before other people do. Because let's face it, when you get going, no one's just like, yeah, Matt, you're for sure going to make it. So if
Heck
you're,
no.
you
Heck
know,
no. I had
and
nobody was
it's,
standing in my
yeah,
corner,
and
man.
it's
Yeah.
okay. I didn't have that experience either. But if you got that one person, and you got that belief in yourself, you put that out, and that's what this exchange is all about. Just getting people like yourself and others that you took the whatever you red pill, green pill, whatever, and then you took the leap.
Yeah.
And look at you now, man. You got like a story to tell, and you have, assets all in your name just out of just being able to risk something and stick with it. So,
Yep.
dude, you should be freaking like, I don't know, I'm sure you're pretty proud of yourself, but besides that, dude, you should be like, wow. Like, I bet you look back sometimes and you're like, man, I'm surprised I made it this far, and I know there's more to come. I bet.
Yeah, man. I look back and like you said, with just having faith in yourself, that's the hardest part of this entire game, man. I coach people through this. I walk people through this. I try to help people through the process, and the steps work, man. I think people just don't allow themselves to be that person to do it. There's just too much. We're so groomed that to think that failure is bad, with school and everything, right? Like just because you don't get it right the first time, that like, you're doomed for the future, right?
Yeah.
Which is just not the case, man. You got to allow yourself to like fail, because like, a quote I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times is like, what's the opposite of success? It's not failure. Failure is part of success. The opposite of success is quitting, right? So if you don't quit, every failure is a learning experience and is getting you closer to your success, right? So like, with me, with the 203K, like, yeah, man, there was a lot of follies throughout that process, right? We didn't get into it, but like, I bumped my head a lot. But the reality was, without that, I wouldn't have learned so much, and I wouldn't have been able to go back and do it better. The 203K, the first time, took me 120 days to close. Okay. This one, me and my wife bought, we closed in 44 days.
There you go.
And it just goes to show you what that like, time, having faith in yourself, being okay with failing, and just knowing that like you will get through to the other side, right? I'm not the smartest guy in the room by any means. I'm usually slow to pick things up, but one thing I do have is like pig-headed determination. Like I'll just keep going at something, even if like I suck at it for a while. Like I'll keep going, and I'll do it forever. If it's something that I have faith in, I'll just keep going, because eventually you'll get it. Again, I happen to be a lot slower than most, but I have the persistence, man. And that's what's got me places. So.
Well, look, from one New York guy retired,
yes,
from one New York guy to another, man. I love hearing your story, and I'm not surprised because, you come from a great family, and one thing that New York will get you, it'll get you tough enough to deal with some stuff and get there.
Yeah,
and
man.
like,
It'll give you grit for sure.
If you can make it there, right? If you can make it there, you're gonna get anywhere. And that's still the truth, for sure.
It really is. It's so cliche, but there's a ton of truth to it.
Amen. All right, bro. So look, we're gonna before we get out of here, where can people get in touch with you, brother? Where can anyone watching the pod or listening to the pod, where can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So Instagram is really where this all started for me. I just started posting all the information I know about this process and ways to help people on Instagram. So at the 203kway on Instagram. And
say it again for everybody, at the 203K
at the 203kway. If you look up 203K, you just type that in, you'll find me. Awesome. YouTube, same thing. Facebook, all the platforms, you can usually look me up. Like I said, I am the 203K guy. Nobody talks about this stuff, man. So like when you look it up, you'll usually find me. But Yeah, most importantly, like, just if you want to take advantage of this at all, just like you said, man, have faith in it and just know that like that just like everything else out there, it takes some work, it takes some effort, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Fantastic. Well, brother, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day away from your beautiful family and just saying, man, want to appreciate you and just say, you're doing great work, and we're gonna do everything we can to help find more people to direct your way. So, all I can say is thanks again for being here, and we're gonna go ahead and sign off now. But before we do, we always like to do a little something where we kind of let the listeners know that we appreciate them and just say a quick little grace or prayer or whatever, and just
Sure.
kind of bless you. So if you would just take a quick look down, and
Yes, sir.
we can just say thank you, Matt. We just ask that we bless your family, bless everyone around you and your movement and what you're doing with the 203K way. And we're super grateful that you were able to join us here on the show. We wish you nothing but abundance and success, and the gratitude that you provide through Matt. Lord, we really appreciate you for doing that. In his name, amen.
Amen, brother. Thank you very much. God bless you as well. And yeah, man, hope to anyone listening got a lot of value out of this.
For sure. You know they did. All right. You know they did. So
Yeah,
with that being said, this is Damon Hart and our wonderful guest, Matt, the 203K way, telling you to go out there and take some action. And you know what you got to do till you see us again. That's right. Keep it foxy. Bye
Yes,
for now,
sir.
guys.
Stuff.